Guys, I'm back again for another video. So today I'm going to be sharing my birth story and you get to meet Joseph Alexander for the first time. Yeah, so I'll just start at the beginning. The initial labor that I thought was happening started really about 3 weeks before I gave birth. So I gave birth on September 20th. We ended up experiencing some lowering contractions, and that's when I thought that things were actually maybe starting, but it ended up not kind of being not really a false alarm, but essentially just, yeah, it was the beginning of things really happening, but it wasn't, you know, quite happening yet. So yeah, fast forward about 3 weeks, and I woke up one morning about 9 a.m. after I think I was 40 weeks that day. And I woke up at 9 a.m. to contractions, and I was really trying to get back to sleep because I was super tired. But I couldn't get back to sleep because I kept waking up to new contractions, and it was just really uncomfortable, and I couldn't sleep. And so I ended up getting up and I took a shower because I heard that if you shower, a lot of times that will either, if it's real labor, it will help progress things. And if it's not real labor, if it's just Braxton Hicks or something, then it will kind of stop things. So I took a shower, and things didn't really feel like they were progressing, but they were continuing to be just as intense. And then around noon, I think it was about 11 a.m., and I ended up calling my husband, letting him know that things seemed to be progressing, but since we had the previous experience about 3 weeks ago at this point, where things, you know, I thought maybe things were happening, but they weren't. I was pretty unsure whether it was the real deal or not. And it's really hard to know, I think, for even mothers that have given birth before, it's so hard to know when things are really like legitimately happening, because you experience so many new feelings, and it's just hard to place what is legitimate labor and what is just kind of progress. So anyway, back to the story. About, I think he got home about noon, and around then, that's when my water broke, and I actually didn't know that it broke, and I was thinking that it broke while I was in the shower. And I actually thought that I had just lost control of my bladder, so I was kind of embarrassed. I was telling my husband about it, and he was like convinced that it was for sure my water, and I was like, well, what if I'm just peeing myself? And I think I was saying that for pretty much all day. Like, I was convinced that I just had lost complete control. And but he was sure. He's in the medical field, and he was like, I'm 100% sure that it's your water. He ended up being right, of course. So later, I think that afternoon, my midwife came, and she kind of observed me, and she could tell that it wasn't really intense yet. So she decided to leave, and said that she would come back if we felt things were progressing a little bit more. And so we ended up, it seemed like things were like slowing to a stop, and we just ended up having a nice dinner together, Steve and I, and then we went for a little walk. And when we went for the walk, things started really seeming like they were progressing. We barely even walked far. We just walked down the street, and it felt like everything was moving really quickly at that point. And I was experiencing way more intense contractions than I had before, and so I kind of had felt like, okay, this must be it. And so we came back home, and we just started, we just went to bed and just were relaxing. And are you hungry? Try feeding him. See if he's hungry. So anyway, we went to bed, and we were just relaxing, and I was going through contractions, and everything started really to pick up at this point. And so Steve called the midwife again, and she came, and this was around 8 or 9 p.m. I think. Everything was so intense. I was so in my own head, and I was not able to really even understand what was happening around me. yeah, once the midwife came, everything was super, super intense, and I was just in so much pain. And at that point is when Seb and the midwife started setting up my birth pool, and it was actually set up just right here behind me. And it felt like ages before everything was set up, but finally when they started filling it, they were like, okay, you can try going in the pool now if you feel like it. And I absolutely felt like it. The warm water sounded like a really good idea. And once I stepped in, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so much better. And so I think I was told I labored in the pool for about 6 hours. So I was in there in the warm water, and on one hand, it was really, really nice. Like, the water felt amazing, but the contractions had intensified so much at this point that I was pretty much in misery. Yeah, it was, any woman that's experienced contractions knows it's a pain that you cannot possibly fathom or understand unless you're going through it. Like, it's brutal. It's very brutal. At least it was for me, and I know it is for a lot of people. At a certain point, my midwife decided to check me, and I really didn't want to get out of the pool at this point, and she wanted to check how far along dilated I was. And I really didn't want to get out of the pool, but apparently it's more accurate if you do. And so I just told her, can you please just check anyway? And so she did, and she said that I was maybe 7 or 8 centimeters dilated, or I think she said 8 or 9 actually. And then I think a couple hours went by, and she decided to check again, but she said I really needed to get out of the pool this time because they really wanted to know how far along I was progressing, because things were getting so intense and I was getting really exhausted. So she ended up having me get out of the pool, and she checked again, and I was actually 7 centimeters dilated. So that was pretty disappointing for all of us, because we were all so beat by then. I mean, especially me, because it's exhausting to go through that much pain for that long. Because at this point, I think I had been laboring for about 20 hours, something like that. It's so hard to recall like any time frames, like how long anything took place. But yeah, so anyway, at this point, they started to kind of, my midwife and my husband started to kind of look at the situation and say, like, okay, do we just keep going as things are? Or, are things going to progress the way that they need to, or do we need to take some other kind of action?